have tried not to live by sort of expectations to how you should go with life and career and all these types of things. And I've made some decisions, I think, in the current situation, which was probably not the wisest one at that point in time. But I think I've really always tried to sort of follow my gut. And in that regard, I think it comes back to that situation back then. It was not really a question for me whether I should do it or not. It was the only thing I thought I could do, even though I knew what would come out of it. So I think courage has always been something that I've seen as a value for me, and something that I had to stand up for. And I think next to that, generosity towards other people, for me, that uncovers into empathy, listening, some of the things Kim mentioned. But essentially both being extremely generous with yourself in the meetings with others and show some of that vulnerability that we talk about here, but also being generous in the way you meet other people and treat them, everybody, with the same level of respect and belief that everybody has something to contribute with. So I think that's probably the second one. And the last one is sort of significance, which is around the fact that you only have the time you have here. And I think for me it's super important that I spend it wisely and that I contribute to something that make a difference. And I've worked in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Denmark, and I didn't really find that super significant. And it didn't drive a lot. I think it was a lot about moving papers around. And so I also had to sort of leave that, even though it was a good opportunity. But I think that's probably the last part. And those three in sort of a whole has been my sort of moral compass in the way I've led people at different places, but also in terms of how I've led myself, essentially.
This like humbleness and strength, like a combination of those. And then, as I mentioned, this like wisdom through love. But I have to say, just listening now, like to the things that is coming, fear. And just because, well, the conscious conversation was just like, no. And it's the fear that takes over. And listening to you with this bully, I would just probably be like, I would want to, and I know what I'm supposed to do, but like, no, I'm just gonna back away and just like try to feel safe instead of like all of that fear. And also the fear of confronting this person, like at work, and not knowing what you're getting yourself into. And the fear when people say that you're destroying your career, what are you doing? It's like, I don't know. It's quite scary. So I think that's like one thing as well, and just dealing with that. And every now and then maybe being afraid and not knowing how to deal with it at all. And just like finding those people to maybe talk about that with, and also, this is just coming to my mind now, but also giving yourself enough grace and being patient with yourself, because sometimes the fear rules. So yeah, so that's kind of like fear. I think that it guides us more than we want to admit.
Yes, I think you were mentioning earlier, Philip, about our formative experiences, and absolutely, they do drive so much. But for me, having my adventures in Wonderland and walking between worlds all my life, and realising that the nature of reality was much deeper, much grander than, often we're led to believe, and our societies sort of limit us in. I began to realise and study just how our worldviews drive our behaviours. So if we believe, if we buy into, if we have a worldview of materialism and separation, then that's ultimately what drives our behaviours, and not just individually, but collectively. And so a lot of my life has been trying to understand, how our worldviews do that, but also realising that perhaps collectively we have a relatively fragmented worldview. And so it seems to me that if there's an opportunity for us to heal our worldview, which is really healing our relationship with the nature of reality itself as this much deeper, grander, more loving wholeness, then we have an opportunity perhaps collectively to change our behaviours. So although that drives me personally, I feel it's a deep driver in the way we've collectively been in the world, and at a point when we really need to wake up from that illusion of separation. Because as a cosmologist, I spent most of my life, I started studying quantum physics when I was 5 years old, as you do. As you do. So for me, you know, as a cosmologist, as a scientist, as well as someone who has great curiosity on this subject, and realizing that the true nature of reality is wholeness, how can we bring that into our lives, you know, personally and collectively?